is Tesla a model for other companies to follow in terms of driving change around sustainability? There's a loaded question for you.
Yes, and I want to be mindful of
I'll give you my answer too, by the way, in the just so that it's not one-sided.
So I'm going to speak from the EV perspective, not maybe specific with Tesla, outlining Tesla, but the general movement and the adoption of EVs and the regulations and support that we have the EVs.
Can you separate the two?
Well, so
this will be fun. Okay.
Yes. So there's different perspectives. So at the first, kind of like looking at the EV adoption and seeing like, is that the solution to the long-term solution, sustainable solution to our transportation problem? And my genuine perspective, it's a temporary solution.
Yeah.
But it is not a long-term solution. And the simple fact of the resources, finite resources that we have, the current rate of recycling, reusing of those resources, and just even putting some numbers together of the supply and demand side. How many vehicles do we want to put on the road, and how many mines do we have to set up to support the resources of those precious metals, which we don't have currently excess capacity or surplus for those minerals for making the batteries and so on. So, and again, what cost? So if we're buying a cheaper version of EV, electric vehicle, as a substitute for fossil fuel. So fossil fuel industries have their own costs, right? Environmental and climate costs that we have not been accounting for as a final product. The similar, we have EVs that do not account to the final total environmental costs and the long-term costs by using the resources. So of the longer sort of horizon, I do not see EVs and adoption of EVs as a final solution, but perhaps a step that can help us to transform into new version of solving transportation problem.
Okay. I'm wondering if you're willing to stake a ground on, or put a stake in the ground on Tesla's approach here.
In what perspective?
Okay, so let me tell you my answer rather than just seeing what else comes out. Because my observation on Tesla is they are operating against an environmental mission as a company, but they're not selling that as their product, right? I fundamentally don't believe that we would have the number of EVs on the road from any maker if Tesla didn't exist, or a company like it, because they went and didn't create a more sustainable car. They created a better car that is arguably more sustainable. Not sustainable, I'm going to say more, because I think you're exactly right. Like there's such huge problems with extractive industries, where the power generation source, blah, blah, blah. But they created a better car for a lot of people. And I think that got them a lot of traction. And I wonder if there are lessons to be learned or avoided by, other entrepreneurs who are sustainability motivated, but, but maybe are going to be struggling to get people to change behavior, to buy into their vision.
So when you said one thing, that they created a better car. So what they created is a product that have a higher perceived value.
Well said.
And what we think is a better car with a bunch of features that makes us feel good about ourselves when we're driving it. So it's not necessarily a product that is better. So how do we categorize what is the better? Is it a sustainable product? Is it a product that can actually solve the problem of transportation? I do not think so. Yeah. But it's the product that makes people feel good when they drive it. So that's the product that they created. And that's the value and augmented value of the product that they've created. And that's why we see, so much hype and buzz about it, because that's something that makes us feel good.
Yeah.
Like that was the ingenuity of it. It was not the solution of a problem that we have with transportation. It's how do we feel about ourselves when we think about it. Yeah.
And I think that's such a good point. And I honestly, like, for for entrepreneurs, for visionaries, for people that are motivated to make change in the world, at least for me, I think that is a really interesting and important insight, right? Because they're not, however they did it, they made a lot of people feel good about their choice to buy into that product. I think for some of those people, it had a lot to do with environmental sustainability, real or perceived. For others, it had to do with I can put my foot on the floor and it whips my head back, whatever it is. They didn't ask people to buy into the global problem. They didn't say, "Hey, there's too much carbon in the atmosphere, so buy my product." Because my
Mhm.
observation is that doesn't work most of the time outside of a real niche. And I do think there's a lesson there on creating something of emotionally resonant value that gets people to change behavior. And then hopefully that behavior change is leading toward the sustainability outcome we want. And I think that's really important. I see a lot of entrepreneurs lost in their own head on, well, of course we should care about
Mhm.
X, right? Of course we should care about water quality, as a society. And you're kind of like, well, yes, but as individuals, people don't operate like that. They operate
Yeah.
against what makes them feel good, what makes them proud, what solves hassles in their lives, right? So I don't know. To me, this is something that I think gets overlooked, and sadly the unnamed leader of Tesla does not help in this, but the lessons get overlooked. And I
Mhm.
wonder what other companies have done a good job of creating that emotional value while also resulting in hopefully incremental or step function change for the climate. Are there any others out there that you name?
From what industry?
Any industry.
Well, so I'm going to pick on the one popular brand that half of Silicon Valley is wearing, Patagonia,
Yeah.
which the good thing that they do is that they provide a lot of disclosures. They
Yep.
say this is how we do things, and that's why it costs us more. They're not perfect. They're still using, synthetic materials that's made out of fossil fuels and things like that, but they're recycling. They're trying to showcase how much recycling they're using in their products, and focusing on other sustainable goals and using those actually sustainable strategies as part of their day-to-day operation. So there are companies that are genuinely trying to do something good, and they're showing, okay, well, yeah, if we're doing it right, that is going to cost money. So you have to pay premium. But it's not just perceived value of a product, but the actual value and the true cost of a product, what it takes.
Yeah.
Because even for now, when we buy things, we buy clothes, we do not take into account like simple disposability costs, right? How much does it cost to dispose this thing
Sure.
properly? So if there was a true cost of recycling, reusing, or disposability accounted in the product, it will be higher price. So if there was a car that is truly sustainable with zero net impact, it
Or lasts
would just,
forever. Yeah.
yes, it would just be different. It's a different cost, right? It was just different price. So most of the people would not be able to afford it. And maybe that's the way to go for innovation, to have maybe first two people drive that and then trying to figure out how can we bring those costs down. But the reality is that most products do not represent the true cost of the product. And we as individuals, we're actually bearing those costs with climate change, environmental disasters, pollutions, and everything else.
A
So
hundred.
we're bearing those costs that are not represented in day-to-day purchases that we're making.
And I think that's really important because I think, this is one of those roles where it feels like it almost requires government intervention. It requires that, to be perfectly honest, that dictatorship, right? That says, I am going to force this stuff to be considered. And for what it's worth, I'm a big supporter of that. I think it's actually really important. But on the Patagonia example, I actually also love this because I do. It's a great example, and it's one where yes, there's higher real and perceived value for the purchasers from their transparency and from their efforts, in addition to the fact that a lot of people would say they just, they build great product, right? Inclusive, not just of the fact that maybe it's durable or it looks good, but it makes you feel good and it's recyclable and you understand the supply chain, and all of that collectively creates something that people want to buy. They don't feel guilted into buying it, right? They don't buy
Mhm.
it because they think that behavior is going to virtue signal their way to a happier future, right? They buy it because it's a better product. That's thank you. That's a good example.